Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Anna.
And I'm Brian. We decided to pivot our planned topic today after we both had an unplanned, slightly surreal encounter this morning with a shared face from our past, Liam.
Liam. It was like stepping directly into a time warp, wasn't it? Just seeing him standing there at the coffee shop ordering the exact same overly complicated drink he ordered in college instantly compressed 15 years of lived experience into a single overwhelming moment.
It's a profound neurological shock. You're standing in your current reality, a successful professional, a parent, a mortgage holder, but your brain instantly pulls up the memory file of the 19-year-old version of yourself. Broke, wearing questionable clothes, worrying about a thesis. That temporal dissonance is fascinating.
Temporal dissonance is the perfect word. Your current self is overlaid with your historical self, and the shared past rushes back immediately. We didn't even have to use full sentences. It was all inside jokes and abbreviated memories. Remember that trip to the coast, and the entire narrative of the weekend floods both your minds instantly.
It's the sheer efficiency of shared history. No context is needed. You don't have to spend 30 minutes establishing the backstory of the person, the place, or the emotional stakes. The shorthand is built in, ready to go. And the emotional connection, the intimacy, is instantly rebooted regardless of how long the operational system has been dormant.
That's the most striking part, the emotional immediacy. The moment he smiled, the connection felt as fresh as the last time we saw him, which was easily 10 years ago. It bypasses all the layers of professional formality and new adult caution you built up over time. It's friendship in its rawest, most foundational form.
And that rawness makes you feel strangely vulnerable. You're suddenly exposed to someone who witnessed you at your most uncertain, most foolish, and most aspirational. They hold immutable proof of your past identity, which you might have spent years subtly trying to leave behind.
And the conversation immediately defaults to a historical archive. We spent the first few minutes establishing key data points. Where do you live now? Who are you married to? What career path did you actually end up pursuing? Just slotting the historical person into the modern world.
It's a collective update of the internal database, and there's an unspoken pressure to present a coherent, successful narrative. You're conscious that you're summarizing a decade of complex decisions into a 5-minute elevator pitch for your life. The tendency is to smooth over the failures and amplify the successes, presenting the most polished version of your adult self.
The irony is that even while you're presenting your polished, successful adult self, the friend is still seeing the 19-year-old version of you underneath. They are the only people who can hold both versions of you simultaneously, without judgment. That duality is where the power of the reunion lies.
It's a powerful emotional archive. The experience confirms that the friendships we forge in those intensely formative years, college, early career, carry an immense, almost sacred emotional weight. They witness the genesis of our adult selves.
They do. They are the witnesses to our becoming. And now we need to transition from the immediate shock of that encounter to the systematic process of catching up. How do you efficiently bridge a decade of separation without getting lost in the details?
That bridge is built on shared context and prioritizing information. We should have asked Liam to join the show, honestly, but the encounter has given us plenty to dissect about the psychology of these foundational friendships and the role they play in validating our life journey.
We would elaborate on the specific sensory details that trigger nostalgia. For example, the smell of the coffee shop, a song playing softly, discussing how memory is often multimodal. We would contrast the casual language used with Liam, shorthand, slang, inside jokes, versus the formal, abstract language they use in their current professional lives, highlighting the relief of dropping the professional mask. This section emphasizes the psychological weight of the sudden temporal shift. Welcome back. So Liam and I had about 15 minutes before our appointments forced us apart. That meant we had to engage in the extreme sport of information compression, the art of catching up.
It truly is an art form, and it requires specific conversational strategies.
You are essentially summarizing life-changing events, career pivots, major losses, relational triumphs in sound bites. It's a compressed narrative that has to deliver emotional accuracy without excessive detail.
The first crucial strategy is prioritization. You have to instantly filter your life and decide which 5 things are essential for the other person to know to understand your current state. You skip the mundane, like what you ate for breakfast yesterday, and go straight to the high-impact narratives, the marriage, the relocation, the career launch. You select the most defining experiences.
And you have to rely heavily on mutual contextual knowledge. Since Liam knows our history, we don't need to explain why we moved away from the coast, only that we did. We can gloss over the years of difficulty in the middle and jump straight to the current outcome. The shared past allows for enormous ellipses in the narrative, filling in the blanks quickly. The elliptical nature of the conversation is what makes it so intimate and efficient. It confirms that the core emotional contract remains valid. I remember all the scaffolding of your life, so just give me the summary of the additions. There's an inherent trust in that shorthand.
But there's a risk here: superficiality. Because you're prioritizing efficiency, you often skip the truly complex, messy, and painful parts of life. The catch-up becomes a curated highlight reel, emphasizing success and stability. You talk about the new job title, but not the existential dread that led to the career change or the emotional cost of the relocation.
And both people tacitly agree to accept the highlight reel without prying. It's a necessary social contract to make the conversation efficient and enjoyable. Prying too deep into painful territory would violate the terms of the temporary reunion, and it's often reserved for a deeper, planned conversation.
The question is, how do you politely prompt for depth without prying? It requires specific language. You don't ask, "Did your parents divorce?" You ask, "How has the family dynamic evolved since we last spoke?" It's gentle, open-ended language that gives them control over the narrative they share and respects their boundaries.
And you must practice historical empathy. When they mention a triumph, you automatically recall the foundational struggle that preceded it, which allows your reaction to be genuinely meaningful. When Liam mentioned his successful business launch, I instantly recalled the 2 years he spent working 3 minimum wage jobs to save the capital.
That historical empathy is the secret ingredient that validates the friendship. It says, I wasn't there for the whole journey, but I remember the genesis of the dream and the initial sacrifice. It's an incredibly affirming thing to receive and shows the value of the history.
The final piece of the catch-up art is the pivot to the future. The conversation must transition from the past summaries to the current reality and the possibility of future connection. What are you doing now? We should try to schedule a proper dinner. It's the necessary shift from retrospective to prospective action.
That future pivot is the social mechanism that turns a nostalgic encounter into a potentially renewed connection. It moves the relationship off the archive shelf and places it back in active rotation, demonstrating commitment to its future. We would discuss the nonverbal cues in the catch-up, the extended eye contact, the genuine smile that communicate more than the words themselves. We would analyze how financial status or career gaps influence the conversational flow, noting how sometimes the less successful person feels pressure to exaggerate, while the more successful person tries to downplay their achievements to reduce friction. This tension is inherent in the summary phase.
Welcome back. The most fascinating psychological tension in meeting an old friend is the identity split, the cognitive dissonance between the person they remember and the person you have become.
Absolutely. For Liam, I am frozen in time as the ambitious, slightly chaotic English major from the university common room. That identity is fixed in his mind, and it's often comforting to him because it represents a simpler, shared moment in time, untouched by adult complexity.
But that fixed identity often clashes with your current, messy, evolving self. You may have changed careers, political views, and philosophical outlooks entirely. You're no longer chaotic, you're meticulously organized. And you have to spend the entire interaction managing that cognitive gap, trying to reconcile the two versions of self for the friend.
The friend consciously or unconsciously, may try to pull you back to the historical self. They use old jokes, reference old behaviors, and try to resurrect the old dynamic. And there's a powerful, almost chemical pull to that temporary regression because it feels safe, simple, and unburdened by current stress.
That temporary regression is a powerful form of emotional tourism. You get to visit a younger, less burdened version of yourself without actually having to live that life again. But you can't stay there. The maturity gained over the past decade must eventually assert itself, or the interaction becomes performative.
The tension comes from the fact that they are the only people who can hold you accountable to your past aspirations. Liam knew I wanted to write a book 15 years ago. When he asked, "Did you ever finish that novel?" he's asking a question your newer friends wouldn't dare ask because they don't know the history.
That question serves as a mirror, reflecting the dreams you might have quietly shelved. It forces a moment of self-assessment. Did I live up to the expectations of my younger self? That can be either deeply inspiring if you achieved the goal, or profoundly uncomfortable if the dream died slowly.
And the inverse is true. You have to be careful not to hold them hostage to their past identity. You can't assume that the person who loved partying 15 years ago still wants to stay out until 4 a.m. You must recognize and respect their current evolution, even if it contradicts the familiar historical narrative.
The sign of a truly evolved friendship is the ability to recognize, validate, and celebrate the new person you have become, even if that new person is entirely different from the person they remember. It requires an act of historical empathy paired with present-day curiosity, a commitment to knowing the evolving self.
It requires both parties to update the software of the relationship. It's an unspoken agreement that while the love and connection remain the same, the operational parameters, your routines, values, and boundaries have fundamentally changed, and those changes must be respected.
If that update fails, the relationship remains trapped in the past. It becomes a nostalgic relic rather than a potentially renewed asset. It's a painful realization, but sometimes the friendship doesn't evolve because one or both parties refuse to let go of the fixed historical self, preferring the comfort of the archive. We would discuss the phenomenon of identity closure, how we seek reassurance that our core self hasn't changed by reconnecting with old friends. We would explore the idea that the friend's perception acts as a powerful external validator of your internal sense of continuity, and how losing that friendship can feel like losing a piece of your own history. The discussion would emphasize that the conflict of identity is often internalized before it becomes external.
We keep touching on the power of shared history. Let's analyze its true value. Why are inside jokes and shared memories such powerful emotional currency, instantly bypassing the formality of adult life?
Inside jokes are incredibly efficient social currency. They are linguistic shortcuts that instantly create intimacy. A single phrase or reference can unlock a complex, shared 5-minute memory, reaffirming that we were there. It's proof of a shared, lived past and confirms group membership. The value of that shared past is validation. Old friends are the living, breathing witnesses to your life story. They witnessed your major milestones, your most embarrassing moments, and your formative failures. When they recall a memory, they are affirming that your life, with all its complexities, actually happened.
And that validation is crucial because our modern identities are so often fluid and fragmented, especially through social media. Old friends provide a grounding counterpoint. They remind you of the consistent, core person you have always been, beneath the professional veneer and the curated online persona.
It's the comfort of unconditional familiarity. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to perform. They already know your history, your vulnerabilities, and your default settings. You can drop the social mask and relax into a state of known acceptance, which is a rare relief in adult life.
That familiarity provides a powerful emotional safety net. In moments of adult crisis or uncertainty, calling an old friend often provides more comfort than calling a new friend. The old friend can contextualize your current crisis within the scope of your entire history. They can say, I remember when you handled X, Y, and Z when you were 21. You'll handle this too.
They're the guardians of your personal narrative. They remember the minor details that you, yourself, might have forgotten. The insignificant moments that, in retrospect, were actually pivotal turning points. They fill in the blanks of your autobiography. And the process of laughing over an old, embarrassing moment is highly therapeutic. It allows you to integrate your past failures without shame, because the person recalling the failure is doing so with warmth and affection. It transforms past embarrassment into shared comedy, reducing its emotional sting.
The ritual of recounting old stories also serves to reinforce the tribal boundaries of the friendship. The inside jokes and shared histories act as a unique language understood only by the 2 or 3 people involved, strengthening the exclusivity and intimacy of the bond.
We should also acknowledge the collective nostalgia factor. When you meet an old friend, you are not just reminiscing about your life, you are reminiscing about a shared cultural era. The music, the fashion, the political climate of that specific moment in time. You are validating a slice of shared history that is otherwise lost to history. We would elaborate on the specific cognitive benefits of nostalgia, how it increases positive emotion, enhances social connectedness, and boosts optimism. We would discuss the idea that shared history provides a template for trust, allowing them to skip the lengthy process of establishing reliability and honesty that new relationships require. The discussion emphasizes that shared history is the greatest single asset of the old friendship.
The post-catch-up analysis, the pragmatic challenge. What happens next? How do you manage the transition from a burst of emotion back to routine?
The first step is managing the emotional high. Seeing an old friend often releases a powerful hit of positive neurochemicals. You feel connected, happy, and validated. You might suddenly feel compelled to reconnect with 20 other people from your past, which is often unsustainable.
That emotional momentum is rarely sustainable. You must set realistic expectations for the renewed connection. If you haven't spoken in 10 years, you shouldn't suddenly expect a weekly phone call. The goal is to move the relationship from the archive to the active rotation, even if that means an annual email exchange or a yearly dinner.
You must determine the investment feasibility. Given your current boundaries, workload, and location, can you realistically invest the time and energy required to maintain this connection? Be honest with yourself and with the friend. It's better to promise a text every 6 months than a commitment you can't keep, which only leads to disappointment.
And you have to define the new terms of engagement. The rules of your 20s are no longer valid. If you were once inseparable, you must now acknowledge the new constraints of marriage, children, and professional life. The friendship will be different. It will be constrained by adult responsibility, and that's okay.
The best strategy is often low-lift maintenance. A simple, personalized text every few months, forwarding an article you know they'd appreciate, or a quick birthday message. These small gestures show you are thinking of them without demanding a significant time commitment or violating your own boundaries.
The quality of the interaction must always take precedence over the quantity. A meaningful 20-minute video call once a year is infinitely more valuable than 20 sporadic, anxiety-ridden texts that lead to nowhere. Focus on intentional, high-quality connection.
You also need to assess whether the renewed connection is mutually beneficial. Is the friend still holding you hostage to the fixed identity of the past? Are they only interested in talking about college? Or are they curious about the new person you have become? The friendship needs to evolve into the present day to survive.
And you must manage the expectation of closure. Sometimes the encounter is just a beautiful moment of historical validation. It was an affirmation that you shared a meaningful past, and the natural conclusion of that interaction is simply appreciating the memory, not forcing an impossible future commitment.
That realization that some friendships are meant to live beautifully in the archive is an act of maturity. It's self-love applied to social relationships, recognizing that protecting your boundaries is necessary, even if the nostalgia high tries to convince you otherwise.
We would discuss the common mistake of over-promising in the reunion moment and the guilt that follows. We would contrast the effort required to maintain old friends, low frequency, high intimacy, versus new friends, high frequency, lower initial intimacy. The focus would be on making a conscious, sustainable decision about the future of the bond. To conclude, let's synthesize the true role of the old friend in our adult lives. They are more than just people, they are essential emotional infrastructure.
They act as an anchor. They ground us when our modern lives feel overwhelming and chaotic, reminding us of the stable core person we were before the layers of adult responsibility were added. They provide continuity of self.
They serve as a mirror. They reflect our past aspirations and failures, forcing us to engage in necessary self-assessment and hold ourselves accountable to the dreams we once had. They are the only people who can ask the hard questions without needing context.
They are witnesses to our entire life journey. They validate our personal narrative, providing the historical empathy and shared memory that affirms our life experiences were real and meaningful.
And critically, they provide unconditional familiarity. They are the people with whom we can momentarily drop the social mask, engage in playful regression, and be fully accepted for who we were, who we are, and who we are still becoming.
The encounter with Liam this morning underscored that these foundational friendships are not passive. They require active, albeit minimal, investment to remain viable. The value of that shared history is immeasurable.
So, the next time you encounter an old friend, embrace the nostalgia, manage the expectations, and recognize the immense psychological gift they offer. Proof of your enduring self.
It's a powerful emotional archive worth maintaining. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the psychology of old friends.
We'll be back next week to explore the ethics of digital archives.
Goodbye for now.